Holy crap, how many of you knew that there was a possible fifth plane? I sure as heck didn't, and after I tell you about this documentary I just watched that was put out like 2 days ago, you can be the judge, because I'm about to recap the whole thing really fast. Because it's kind of seeming like the government isn't admitting that this was a possible fifth plane. So this was United Flight 23 that was scheduled to leave JFK the morning of 9/11. We have flight attendant Sandy, flight attendant Barbara. This was not a full flight. There were 4 passengers sitting in first class, one of which was wearing a burqa, which they assumed was a woman at first, but they said you could barely see the eyes, and then they noticed that the hands looked like man hands and they were hairy. And they described that person as sitting next to someone that looked like a bodyguard. Then there was a man in a suit with a young boy. There was a guy sitting in business class who they noticed because he was just wearing a t-shirt, but was sweating profusely. Like, she said she could see his face sweating, arms, the whole 9 yards. Well, the guy up in first class asks if his son can see the cockpit. At this point, they think nothing suspicious. Now, Deborah, the flight purser, who wished to not have her face shown for the documentary, was scrambling to try to find these passengers fruit plates because she knew that none of them ate meat and all they had on the plane was meat, or dishes with meat. Well, one of the flight attendants notices that the man and his young boy are up by the cockpit doors looking in the cockpit. So the flight attendant starts telling the guy in the suit, hey, we are trying to get you guys fruit plates so you can eat on this long flight. And they're like, we don't care about food. We don't want to eat. We want to take off. Like, very persistent. All of this happened before 8:30, before the first plane hit the World Trade Center. And the pilot catches news of the plane hitting the Trade Center, and he thinks, oh, it's just probably someone in a smaller plane, doesn't know what they're doing. Then he gets a message, be aware, cockpit intrusion, from United Air Traffic Controller. So they barricade their cockpit door with luggage, get the only 2 weapons they could find, which was a fire extinguisher and an axe. The first flight attendant calls the cockpit and tells the pilot that she thinks the 4 guys in first class seem strange. Kennedy Ground Control calls the cockpit and tells the pilot that the airport's closed, the facility is closed, and everyone needs to immediately evacuate. But the pilot says what's crazy is they were behind about 10 to 11 planes, and normally there's only about 2 planes in front of them. They would have already been in the air had that not happened. As the passengers are evacuating, one of them passes the flight attendant and says, did they get the White House? Now, the flight attendants go through the whole plane. They make sure the bathrooms are empty. They make sure the whole plane is empty. The pilot looks through a peephole on the door, and all he sees is a United mechanic. The mechanic tells the pilots, you need to get off the plane. I've been ordered to lock the plane. They all made sure the plane was cleared, emptied, and locked. People down on the ground, whether it was baggage or ground crew of some sort, 20 minutes after the plane was locked, see 2 people running through the plane. The crew tells United everything that they've seen, and they call the FBI. They all get put up in a hotel, and the FBI comes to question United crew the next day. And one of the first questions the FBI asked is why this hatch was open, which leads down to the electronics of the airplane, which the flight attendants were like, that's the main door to leave the plane. That was not open. The plane was sealed up, completely locked after everyone was evacuated, so that got opened after. If this was a 5th plane and they had people working on the ground cooperating with them, this guy shows that easily you can open this right from the bottom of the plane and go straight up into that electrical area. That would be the hatch that was open after everyone was evacuated. What were they doing? Were they getting something off the plane? So they take the crew to Port Authority and do a lineup, and they can't identify any of those people. On an airplane next to United Flight 23, the tail number with 1 digit off, they found 2 box cutters in the back pocket of the plane with 1 tail number off. So the pilot kind of assumes that if someone was cooperating from the ground, they told them the wrong plane. He emphasizes that people doing food delivery, cleaning the planes, it's not hard for people to get on the planes and plant box cutters. So they heard the FBI had 7 passengers on their radar, but then no one ever heard any more about it. For the documentary, they even filed a Freedom of Information request to which they got no reply. United 23 is not mentioned in any of the official reports, and Bob Kerrey, part of the September 11th Commission, didn't identify the possibility of a 5th plane. Do you guys think this was possibly a 5th plane?